Hey guys, so today we're going to be covering another installation in my top 10 units list for Dragon Ball Legends. This is the December 2022 edition. So if you're watching this in the future, just keep that in mind. Now, there may be other December 2022 editions coming up, depending on how they handle the rest of Legends Festival this year, but I'll make that clear in future videos if I do another installation of the list in the future in this month. So before we get into the actual rankings, I always like to quickly discuss 3 points regarding the list, which are as follows. Number 1, all characters are considered to be at 14 stars, best teams, best equips, max title boosts, etc. So essentially the best possible environment for each character, as I think it just makes the best sense, the most sense to judge each character at their max potential. And that's also how I've experienced using each character the most. Number 2, I like to view this as a top 10 current meta characters, more so than just, who were the top 10 best characters in the game list, as the meta is constantly changing and evolving, and just because a character, maybe is ranked 5 on the list this time, doesn't necessarily mean they'll always be better than the characters ranked 6 through 10. So just view this list as a current meta snapshot of the game. That's how I like to think of it. And then number 3, this list consists of rankings that are entirely of my own opinion, which has been formed through my own experience playing the game. So please feel free in the comments down below to disagree with my list, and also let me know if what you disagree with and why. So with those 3 points in mind, let's go ahead and jump into the list itself, and let's start with number 10. So coming in at number 10 on the list, a character that just made it into the top 10, I have LF 17 and 18 here. So a character that at this point is pretty old. I mean, they came out in April of this year, so they're around 8 months old, which is, in Legends terms, pretty old. And once you get to the point of being like 8+ months old, you start to really fall off pretty heavily. But the fact that the androids really haven't fallen off that much, I mean, again, let's be honest, they definitely have been power crept, but it's not to the level that you would think of a character being 8 months old here. So that just goes to show how incredibly powerful they were on release, that they're still able to compete in this day and age here. But they're on the list because I think they're actually a really nice tool versus the new blue Zamasu. Obviously referring to the Android 18 side of this character. Zamasu is just a character that is incredibly tanky, pretty much able to eat combos from any character, including like Beast Gohan even, without even really caring about how much damage he's taking, because he has endurance, he's healing tons of HP, he has a counter. It's just a really annoying character to deal with. But this character, with their ability to nullify endurance pretty much against any character, just built into their unique ability, makes them a pretty nice tool to use against the Zamasu. They're probably one of the few characters in the game that can just straight up deal with him without really that many issues. They have a pretty consistent way of getting cover nullification, obviously. Android 17's green card, everybody knows how annoying that is to fight against. Android 18's green card, which removes your vanish and gives you cover null, can win you games in certain situations. They've also received a bunch of help with the future buffs that we've gotten recently in the game, so that helps them also. But in terms of why they're only number 10 on the list here, Beast Gohan, just like probably the biggest counter to this character in the game, period. It just becomes very, very difficult to deal with him. 18 can kind of fare okay against Beast Gohan, but I mean, Beast Gohan has so many ways to go type neutral, both offensively and defensively, that it almost doesn't even matter that 18 has type advantage over him. So that's the one thing. Beast Gohan to me has been the most used character that I've encountered, so more often than not, you're going to be fighting Beast Gohans, and in that sense, this character doesn't do the greatest against him. And then just in general, I think defensively also, they're not really up to speed with the majority of other characters we've gotten. Again, that just goes, it just goes back to them being 8 months old, I think. But overall, I think they're still pretty good. On future, in the right situations, they can do pretty good work, I think. Yeah, they're number 10 on the list. Let's move on to number 9. Number 9, we have LF Zenkai Rose Goku Black, and this might be a bit of a controversial position for this character. I think a lot of people probably wouldn't even have this guy on their list. But I actually do really like this character. I think they did a good job with him in not making him too good, but also, not making him too bad either. Not reserving and holding back too much on this character. I think this guy is actually pretty good. He has a lot of ways to extend combos with the strike card that he draws whenever he's faced with an enemy. And then they also gave him 20 ki now as well, whereas he never even used to get ki off of there. That's pretty nice. That actually does catch a lot of people off guard. So let's say you Rising Rush somebody, which in a lot of instances, because this Rose does nullify endurance, you're probably going to want to Rising Rush a lot of times with this Rose. And what that does is, let's say you Rising Rush against a hybrid team, they, sacrifice Red Pan, for example. After you've killed Red Pan with this Rose, let's just say Beast Gohan switches in for the opponent, you instantly are going to be drawing a strike card and getting back 20 keys, so you're instantly ready to fight back. This Rose has the ability to, counter tackles right away after that, where generally a lot of units after they rush, obviously you start off with 0 cards in your hand. Yeah, unless you have like double card draw speed, you're not going to really have an effective way to draw and refill your hand and be ready to fight again after rushing. Whereas this Rose can, instantly be ready to fight back. So that does make a difference. It leaves you a lot less open to counterattacks like that. And I just mentioned the anti-endurance tech that this Rose brings to the table, and I think endurance is a pretty big factor in today's meta. Future Gohan is on a lot of teams. Beast Gohan obviously is, I think, just the most used character in the game right now. Obviously has endurance when you rush, and then now we have Zamasu as well, also has endurance. So a lot of these top teams have characters with endurance, with I think GT probably being the only super competitive top tier team that doesn't have endurance. But this Rose does do really well against the Super Saiyan 4s, obviously the Goku end of that. And even against Vegeta, his blue card can go type neutral for him and do pretty good damage to them. And then in terms of why he's only 9th on the list and not higher, he doesn't necessarily do the craziest damage. He actually does have a pretty decent main ability effect. It gives him 100% penetration to enemy sustained damage cut for 30 counts, which is pretty good. And then his ultimate does hit fairly hard. But other than that, like his normal strike cards, his blast cards, wouldn't really consider this guy the hardest hitting character in the game. His blue card does do AoE damage, but it's not going to, it's not like back in the day, full power Frieza decimating teams with 1 blue card. It's not to that level. And then the other thing I'll mention is this guy doesn't really have the greatest defensive capabilities either. He does have Zenkai stats, so based off of those, he should be able to tank pretty good type of neutral damage. Like, for example, if like Pan or something, or if Blue Zamasu is attacking this guy, he should be able to fare okay defensively. But, against the Super Saiyan 4s, when Vegeta switches in, I wouldn't really have this Rose tanking those hits. He's not a character that you can really throw in there and expect to do well, but he can be annoying. He applies debuffs. He's increasing the enemy's cost. So he has some uses, and I think he's a very technical character. And I'm comfortable with him being at number 9. So let's move on to number 8. All right, coming in at number 8, we have GT, Android 17, a really, really powerful character. Came out during part 1 of Legends Festival this year. Honestly, when I first saw that they were coming out with an Android 17 from GT, I was like, really? This is the guy you came out with? But he does actually, fulfill a lot of roles that I think are necessary for his teams, and I definitely have come to like this character a lot, even though I'm not really the biggest fan of the actual character they chose. The unit in Legends is very, very powerful. So in number 8, right, the reason why he makes the list, he's a really nice support unit. Now this guy is a character that came after Pan, and I think Pan is probably even still just like the optimal way to build a support character. And while I don't think this guy is as good of a support character as Pan, and in terms of pure supporting ability, I do probably think this guy is a better fighter than Pan is as a complete unit in the game. The one thing to mention about this character, well, I guess there's 2 mechanics that I want to mention that I think have this guy stand out as opposed to other support characters, is his main ability has the effect where it locks in the enemy for 2 counts. That's not a traditional locking mechanic, as it only increases the subcounts of the allies in standby by 2 seconds. It's not like no switching, right? That's a different mechanic. So you can't use this guy's main ability and then rush against the Super Saiyan 4s, because they'll still reduce the allies subcount by 10, right? So it's not going to actually matter against them. But against most characters that don't actually manipulate subcount when they're hit or whatever, this will affect them. And then his green card is very unique. It actually gives him anti-endurance for 5 counts, which is not something we see, I think, ever. Like, I think this is the first green card that actually has this effect on there. So you combine those 2 effects together, right? Green card where he nullifies endurance plus the main ability that locks the enemy in. You pretty much have free reign over who you're going to be rushing then, right? Because you can rush Beast Gohan with those effects up. You can rush Zamasu with those effects up. You can rush Future Gohan. I have had my 14-star fully defensively built Future Gohan killed by this guy's rush with those situations aligning. So this guy can be really strong in that regard. And then I think the third thing I want to mention quickly about this guy in terms of why he's on the list is his healing is really, really strong. So first of all, this guy heals 30% of damage received just in general. And then this guy has like the purple Bojack effect, where he actually heals 35% of total HP after 30 counts from battle start. So when that counter hits 150, that's why you always see this guy's HP shooting all the way up it's a 35% heal, which is ridiculously strong. So a lot of times people will have this guy take damage in the beginning of the fight, knowing they're going to be able to get a massive heal, 30 counts once the battle started. So yeah, this guy's healing, I think, in combination with everything else he's doing, is really, really strong. In terms of why I don't have him higher up on the list, I guess lower, more close to the top of the list, I guess. So number one, his damage isn't super impressive. I mean, it's actually pretty good. I think this guy as a support character doesn't do bad damage at all. One of the major issues though I have with the way that they've built this guy for offense is that he doesn't start stacking his damage buffs unless the enemy is below 70% HP already. So once the enemy is below 70% HP, he does pick up a stacking 10% damage inflicted buff for 10 counts every time he uses a card, which is actually pretty strong. I think that's a strong ability. I just think it would have been better if they hadn't gated that to be behind the enemy's HP being a certain threshold, just due to how much healing exists in this game right now. And then number two, I think the biggest issue of this guy with his role as a supporting character is he doesn't manipulate subcounts for allies. To me, as a support character, that's one of the most powerful things you can do. He himself has -2 to own subcount as default, so he has a 8 subcount, just default subcount thing for himself, but that obviously does not affect the allies. So for me, if they actually give, like, let's say his green card, for example, reduced ally subcount by 3 like Pan, and that's all they did for him in terms of subcount manipulation, that might have been enough for me to put this guy maybe even 2 spots higher on the list. So that's a really strong effect that this guy unfortunately did not have. So let's call it there. Number 8, we have GT Android 17. Let's move on to number 7. Number 7 on the list, we have Ultra Legendary Super Saiyan Broly. Still to this day, probably my favorite release of the entire year, just because of what he brought to the table and what he still brings to the table for the game right now. So I think a lot of people probably don't see this guy as much in PvP, which is kind of strange to me. I actually can't explain why people don't use this guy more. I'm going to try my best here to explain why I have him at number 7. So in terms of why he's even on the list at all, and it's still, in my opinion, one of the only characters in the game. In fact, I'd probably say at this point, one of the only 2 units in the game that can consistently tank, the other one being Blue Zamasu, which we'll get to later. He's probably still with the best disruption in the game. I mean, I think Pan actually does a pretty good job of that as well. And then, of course, Blue Zamasu have a really good kit in terms of disruption, right? This Broly, I think probably the best out of the 3, though, in terms of just pure disruption, right? Cover Change essentially blocks anything besides ultimates. And then when his gauge fills up, he's healing, he's removing Vanish from the enemy, and he's destroying cards, and he's destroying Dragon Balls. So that unique gauge, probably one of my favorite things that this guy's doing. He can actually do pretty good damage with his blue card and his ultimate. I've seen blue cards chained off of cover changes do half damage to, like, type neutral enemies that are meta relevant characters. So this guy can hit pretty damn hard. And then the last thing that I'll mention, which is actually I think a pretty underrated part of what this guy can do, is he has like almost no key issues whatsoever at all. He gets 100 key on main ability, just boom, full key instantly on main ability. He gets 50 key for just switching in. And on top of that, he has a baseline buff. If we even go in and just look at his unique ability, he gets 150% to key recovery. And then on top of that, he gets an extra 30% key recovery from the Ultra ability here. So he's basically going to be at a baseline of 180% to key recovery. So that in combination with, I think, his high key recovery stat right here, like, he is, you notice this when you're like charge stepping and sidestepping with his character, he gets key so fast. Paired up with his double card draw speed that he gets for the enemy being switched in for a certain amount of time, like, this guy is just a combo machine. So this guy, I think, both offensively and defensively, can still put in a lot of work. And then in terms of why, I guess he's not higher up on the list. So while he's defensive, he doesn't have like endurance or any other anti-Rising Rush tech besides his Dragon Ball destruction on gauge buildup. So that's one issue, right? If you are, let's say you switch into Broly and the enemy has like cover null, and then you just rush you, right? That's it, and then Broly's dead. So. And then number 2, I think this is probably the biggest problem for him right now, unfortunately. I would argue that his teams aren't necessarily the greatest right now. And I guess with his teams, I'll say mostly that pertains to like movies, which is basically necessary for this character because his Ultra ability literally depends on you using him on a movies team. I guess you can use him on a leader slot for other teams, but it's very limiting. I will say that the team composition of like this Broly, Pan, and like Beast Gohan, I think is a great team still. And I think it's pretty criminal that we don't see more people using that team. But the main issue with that team, and I think why people don't use that team, is not having Beast Gohan in a full hybrid setup takes so much damage out of his hands. Just due to the equipment, right? Hybrid Saiyan equipment, like you want to be running next to other hybrids, other Sun family battle members. That gives so much pure damage. It's almost essential to be running them on that same exact setup. So it almost doesn't feel worth sacrificing that damage to use Broly on the build over someone like Future Gohan. And that's the reason why I think we probably don't see this Broly used on as many setups next to Beast and Pan, which are pretty much the core movies characters right now in the game. So while I do think this Broly is incredibly strong defensively and offensively, it's just an unfortunate situation with the team builds right now and what you want to be using like Beast Gohan, because let's just be honest, Beast Gohan's better than this character by a long shot. That's the reason why I think we don't see him as often, but still one of the best characters in the game, I think. And I think once we start getting better, newer and better movies characters that don't necessarily depend on you using like Sun Family and Hybrid Saiyan on the team, this guy will make a comeback, and you guys will see why he's so good. Okay, coming in at number 6, we have LF Future Gohan. At this point, this guy is easily the oldest character on this list, so I'm not really going to go into too much detail here, because at this point, you guys probably know how he works. The all-around master. He's, just to list off a few of the traits that this guy brings to the table. He goes type neutral when an ally is defeated. He has endurance. He has permanent card draw speed. He is able to gain his vanish back on strike cards. He has incredible... one of the best cover changes even still to this day. He does a lot of support. His unique equipment that he recently got, I think, is what actually pushed him up this level. Provides a lot of healing to an already super resilient team like, the Beast Gohan hybrid setup, who that team already gets increased HP restoration thanks to Pan, so that's even more effective there. And he's a hybrid Saiyan, so he automatically gives teams like the Beast Gohan hybrid team access to the ridiculous equipment they need to have Beast Gohan just become unstoppable. So, in combination with the already ridiculous support that he already does. And then in terms of why he's not higher up on the list, I guess his damage isn't great. I mean, this guy is 2 years old. He's not gotten a Zenkai. He does have the unique equipment, which helped damage a little bit, but this guy did not age well thanks to his damage. He aged well thanks to all of the intangible things I just listed. And then I guess something else to mention too is a lot of the newer characters don't particularly care really that much about this guy's cover change anymore. Back in the day, you got 2 of your cards destroyed by this character, your combo is over. Nowadays, you have Beast Gohan, who has so much card draw speed that he quite literally doesn't need cards in his hand to continue a combo. You just sidestep, you draw multiple cards during your sidestep, and you just continue your combo with his unique gauge buff active. And then I think the Vegeta side of the tag 4s are also in a similar position as Beast Gohan there. So this guy covers in against Beast Gohan or the tag 4s. You can sort of deal with it and just sort of punch through the cover change a lot of times. Number one, they don't care about the actual cover change itself, but the card destruction as well. It's kind of, it does matter. I think it does help to destroy cards for them, but they find a way a lot of times through it, and especially with a lot of the characters in the game right now, just having so much card draw speed and drawing cards on when you're faced with an enemy or when you're switching in. So there are ways to sort of get around this guy's cover change, which I think probably is the most valuable part of this character next to his support. So yeah, just a really strong character. I think his role on the hybrid team with Beast Gohan and Pan is pretty much what establishes this guy so high on the list here, but it's insane. This guy is approaching up like literally 2 years old, and he's still on the top 6 of my list here. It's insane. I don't know. At some point he'll fall off. We'll see. Maybe in 2025. But yeah, Beast Gohan. Future Gohan, number 6. Let's move on to the top 5. Moving into the top 5 here, we're going to start off with Dragon Ball Super Superhero Pan. Now, I'm sure you guys know how this character works. Not going to spend an eternity talking about her, but just to quickly go over why she's number 5. Best support in the game by far. I'm sure you guys know this. The amount of damage she provides to her teams it's just ridiculous. It's literally insane. On top of her being a hybrid Saiyan, so she's pretty much just the perfect partner you can have for Beast Gohan, as well as a good leader slot unit for any team. I remember when this character was first shown off, and I tweeted out like, yeah, you just put Pan on any team, like this GG, and she can support them as well as anyone else can. I think that's probably still applicable today, even on like GT. You can just throw Pan on GT and Looter Slot. You can just throw Pan on Future and Looter Slot, and the teams are going to be complete. Honestly, might even just be straight up better than the normal builds for those teams, just because of how insane this character is. And it's not just from her kit as well, her Z ability. She does actually provide HP as well as critical, I think, from her Z ability to Sun Family. So you don't need to worry about including, other HP buffers on your bench, unless you want to have multiple HP buffers, which I think is a pretty viable strategy now. It's always really been viable having multiple HP buffers, but I think especially now it does work pretty well in the meta. But yeah, just a ridiculous character. And then also not just damage either, right? The sub count manipulation is unmatched, I think, in my opinion. And that is what makes her, I think, a better character in terms of support than someone like the GT Android 17, which we looked at earlier in this video, right? I think the 17 is probably a better fighter than this Pan because that 17 does more damage. He's a more well-rounded character. But in terms of fulfilling their support role on the teams that they're on, this Pan is just, you can't really touch her. Subcount manipulation through the main ability, subcount manipulation through the green card, subcount manipulation every time she gets hit, right, for Gohan and Piccolo allies. So yeah, she's just a ridiculous support character. And then in terms of why she's not higher on the list, I guess, number one, damage is horrible. Like, her damage is terrible outside of her blue card. She has no cover null. She does have card draw speed, but like, you're not really using this Pan for damage. She is able to stack up damage buffs for her allies by using cards, which is kind of a double-edged sword because she's not doing much damage herself, but she is stacking up damage buffs for the allies to do more damage later on. And we are at a point now where this Pan, as well as the Piccolo and Gohan that came out with her, no longer have access to the featured boost. So their boost period is now over. And then, now that she's fallen out of boost, her defense is just not there anymore. You can tell. It is a pretty big difference. So characters like, the tag Super Saiyan 4s really do a number on her, even type neutral. And I've had Goku, I've used the tag 4s against Pan, and I've had other people use the tag 4s against my Pan post boost. And yeah, that Goku could definitely one-shot her with a blue card from full health. It's happened, and I've done it before. So you can definitely tell the major loss in defensive utility from this Pan post-boost, but still just as good of an offensive support, still just as annoying to fight, and I see this Pan being a massive issue moving forward as we continue to get other characters that synergize well with her. So number 5 is Pan. Let's move on to number 4. Coming in at number 4, we have Zenkai LF Super Saiyan 4 Goku. This guy is pretty dumb. They really went all out with this character. They don't really go all out with Zenkais anymore. This is one of the exceptions, one of the only exceptions we've seen in a very, very long time. So number 4 on the list. I mean, this guy's damage is absolutely insane. Probably the number one factor that I want to just talk about first and foremost. Probably the best last man standing character in the game. His ult hits like an atomic. If last man standing, this guy props his main ability and hits you with a raw ult, you're probably dead. Unless you have type advantage and you have a lot of defense. Like, I've seen this guy kill Pan from 2/3 HP remaining from his ult. Like, this guy is that guy. That's how strong he is. His synergy with the tag Super Saiyan 4s, I mean, they clearly set up the GT team with this guy alongside with the tag 4s, and then GT 17 in mind as being the main 3 you want to be using together for the optimal GT lineup. This guy has the two usages of the cover rescue ability once you have a full GT setup. Or I guess it's GT or Sun Family, right? Paired up with the sub count reduction from the tag Super Saiyan 4s when the enemy rushes. So unless the enemy has cover null when they activate their Rising Rush, I mean, this guy's just going to come in and save you, right, with his cover rescue ability. So unless you're Beast Gohan or the tag 4s, you're going to have a tough time rushing this team. A lot of times you see people just hesitant to rush the tag 4s because they know this guy's ready to come in and save. And then, I think the Zenkai stats on top of him already coming into the Zenkai having access to a really, really solid unique equipment makes him pretty good defensively. I've seen, this guy hovering around 4 million HP on some team builds, and that's not just because you're pumping this guy up with 1 million HP equipment or Z abilities. It's because of that one unique equipment plus his Zenkai stats plus a competent HP bench. I mean, you're going to be seeing this guy at like 3.8 million HP pretty consistently, even without trying to make him that defensive. It's just the way he is now. So I'm struggling to find like negative things to say about this character, but I guess in terms of why he's not higher on the list, his cover null is pretty situational. I mean, they gave him cover null at all, which is pretty impressive, but his cover null is only applicable when an ally is dead, and it only lasts for 10 counts. So once an ally is defeated, you switch into this character. He has cover null, but it's only for 10 counts, and then it goes away unless you switch back out and come back in with him. Definitely can be really good, though. I mean, only 10 seconds still means you're going to have a free combo for 10 counts as long as you get one started. And then the second thing, this is nitpicking at this point, just because I have nothing really much else to say negative about this character, but I'm still not really a huge fan of his green card. They did make it better by a decent amount. It now gives you 70% vanish and defensive type neutrality for 15 counts, but the caveat is you have to actually land the green card. It doesn't happen on activation. And so if I was going to change one thing about this character, I'd probably change the green card effects to become active on activation, not on hit, right? So if you miss your green card, from let's just say from close range, you see an enemy jump and you press your green card. In my opinion, if they wanted to push this guy up a little bit higher to the next level, they could have given you the 70% vanish restoration on activation instead of on hit. So that's, again, I'm nitpicking there. I don't think he needed that, but he's exceptionally good, both offensively and defensively. Really, really impressed by what they did with the Zenkai. Not really too often you see a Zenkai character in the top 5 on these lists anymore. So this guy, one of the few exceptions here, but let's move on to the top 3. It's a pretty competitive world here in top 3 land. Alrighty, so coming in at top 3, the number 3 spot on the list, we have Blue Zamasu. I was pretty disappointed when I saw that they were going to be releasing another Zamasu for the banner unit of the Part 2 banner for Legends Festival here. But I am really, really impressed with what they did with this unit. Sure, would I have liked it to have been a different character? Yes, but this kit is something that I'm actually very happy they went with. So I'm just trying to think of the best way to describe this character. I'm probably going to just say a lot of the same things I did with Ultra Broly for this Zamasu. So if you guys didn't watch my breakdown on the Ultra Broly, he's number 7 on the list. It's probably just going to be a lot of the same stuff, so I'm going to skip a lot of that. But I guess the best way to put it is just that this guy almost feels like Ultra Broly with a better green card and endurance. I think that's the easiest way to explain what this Zamasu is. He's just Ultra Broly with a much better green card and endurance. Imagine Ultra Broly if he had those things. He's one of the only units in the game that can consistently tank full combos from the best units in the game. His key reduction, or key disruption, I guess, is incredibly good. He gains cover null when activating his counter, which is his green card. He reduces arts power by 40%. 40%, not 14, 40% for blue cards and ultimates, which is actually just nuts. And then he also has the LF Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta / Revival Cell mechanic, where he reduces his own sub count when allies are hit to be able to quickly sub in and eat the rush whenever the enemy decides to rush, right, with his endurance. He also has the team heal with his main ability. I mean, this guy's just ridiculous. I don't really have any negative things to say about this character, but if I had to give a reason why I don't have him higher on the list, I mean, he's already 3. I guess it would just be due to the fact that he doesn't dominate as much offensively as the other units above him, and I just feel like he doesn't single-handedly control the fight as much as the units in the number 2 and number 1 spot, right? This guy's role as a defensive character is not to be able to just come in as your main point character and just control the fight by himself. Although I think this actually is one of the few exceptions as a defensive character where he probably still could do that, right? You have instances where this guy's countering the opponents. He's just comboing forever with cover null. He has card draw speed when the enemy switches. He's healing. He's providing HP restoration for the entire team, so he's supporting in that way as well. He also does provide a damage buff to his allies when his HP falls below 50%. His blue card hits ridiculously hard, so he can control the fight, but when you compare his ability to control the fight next to the 2 characters we're about to look at, I don't think it's as dominant. But overall, this character is a warm welcome to the game. I think he's going to influence things pretty heavily as we move forward here. I can see this guy being a pretty go-to character for leader slot usage moving forward on a lot of different setups. But Blue Zamasu, really strong, really powerful. He's just insane. Alrighty, coming in at number 2, we have the tags Super Saiyan 4 Goku and Vegeta. I would classify this character as being the headlining character of Legends Festival 2022. Really powerful, again, there's not really much negative things, like not really that many negative things I can say about this character. But in terms of why they're so high on the list here, I think the number one thing that I would attribute this to is their cover nullification consistency. I would say that the most important part of each fight is the first phase, quote unquote, of the fight, where both players have 3 units left and you're both fighting to land that first killing blow, because the first person to lose a character, it becomes a 2v3, and then the person that has 2 characters left typically is at a pretty big disadvantage. You have less vanishes to play with, and things just, are much harder to deal with from a standpoint of having 2 characters versus the opponent having 3 characters. So that's where this unit is at its strongest, since they can grab 10 counts of cover nullification for tag switching. On top of that, Vegeta, in most instances, is able to string together so many cards and extend combos for so long that you almost always end up finishing the combo with a Goku blue card that he guaranteed draws. The enemy can't nullify it with cover rescue. So offensively, this character is extremely difficult to withstand, but the thing to remember about this character is that their damage isn't being dealt in short bursts like with Beast Gohan most of the time. Rather, it's, with long, drawn-out combos, so you at least have time as the person being attacked to most of the time switch characters and build up your combo compensation and stuff like that. They have an AoE green card that allows them to gain priority more easily and to start their rampage. As we just talked about, their cover nullification is going to kick in most of the time there. And it is a short animation green card as well, so even if they whiff it and you aren't ready to immediately counterattack, they can most of the time recuperate from that. And I guess I also have to mention the subcount manipulation as well. So this character has a mechanic where they reduce ally subcount by 10 when you use when the enemy uses an ultimate or awaken card or they rising rush. So they're always ready to switch out to a character that has endurance or can cover rescue, aka Zenkai Super Saiyan 4 Goku, or just to sacrifice a different character off, which I think most of the time you would want to do with this unit, right? You're going to want to sacrifice most of the time a different character because it's such a valuable unit. If I had to say why this character is number 2 and not number 1, again, I'm nitpicking here, but I'm trying to be very, very specific about things, because if you're the number 1 character in this game, you're probably just ridiculously broken. The number 1 thing I'd point out is probably Goku not having card draw speed. Although if he did have it, if Goku had card draw speed, I'm pretty sure this would be the best unit in the game, hands down, by quite a significant margin. But Goku not having card draw speed means it could be sometimes difficult for him to build up enough of his tag gauge to be able to switch into Vegeta, which is where this unit really starts to snowball. Once Vegeta switches in, you pretty much know the combo is going to go on for a long time, because what I found is you switch into Vegeta, he's drawing a card, he has double card draw speed. Almost every single time you go into Vegeta from Goku as a tag switch, Vegeta is able to use enough cards in that combo to go back into Goku and then guaranteed draw the blue card. A lot of times, you using that blue card is going to restore your vanish because you already have multiple cards in your hand at that point in time. So that's where this unit becomes the strongest, right? You combo with Goku for a little bit, you switch into Vegeta. Vegeta's able to combo long enough to go back into Goku. You draw the blue card, which restores your vanish and does tons of damage. It's just a cycle that continues like that constantly. But the difficulty in using this character is actually being able to grab the combo starter with Goku and then use enough cards to actually go into Vegeta to start the cycle again. So I think the card draw speed would have really helped out Goku in that situation. But again, I think if he did have that, things might just have been a little bit too over the top. So I'm kind of glad he doesn't. And then I guess the other point to make in terms of nitpicking here, losing cover nullification if the enemy has less than 3 characters left is kind of annoying. But at that point, I mean, the mechanic becomes less important, right? The cover nullification mechanic becomes less important the less cover changes the opponent has, obviously, because they have less options to switch to, and it becomes more predictable in terms of when they're going to switch. It's easier to keep track of in your head. Okay, this guy switched out on 95 counts, so he can switch back in on 85 counts and stuff like that. So them losing cover null when the enemy has less than 3 characters probably isn't as important as Goku having potential card draw speed. But I think those two things, right? If they had both of those things, this would easily be the number 1 character in the game, not even close. But yeah, I don't know. This character's really good. I think a lot of people significantly underrated them on initial release. And I think they were actually designed pretty well. I don't really have too many nitpicks in terms of what I would have done differently. Power level wise, they're right where they need to be. And I really like this character. Really, really good character. So number 2, tag 4s. Let's move on to number 1. I'm pretty sure you guys know who's coming up. Coming in at number 1, we have Beast Gohan. Here we go. I guess to summarize this without going on for too long, you guys have fought this guy 900 times at this point. You guys know how this guy works. Damage, cover nullification, card draw speed. Those 3 things together mean that if you start a combo with this character, you're probably winning the fight. It's that simple. I think post boost, because at this point, again, like I mentioned with Pan, this Gohan has fallen out of the boost system, so he's no longer in the featured boost tier. I think there's definitely a difference in the damage as well as defense that this guy has. So it's definitely a bit lower than it was when he was in the boost, obviously. But in my opinion, it just wasn't enough to knock him off of his pedestal as number 1. He's just doing too much. He has so many ways to get his Vanish back. He has so many ways to go type neutral, both offensively and defensively. His healing is insane. Ultimate hits like a nuclear bomb. Has a universal cover change that's comboable with the hardest hitting blue card in the game. That can go type neutral with a full gauge. What else? He grabs endurance when the enemy rushes, destroys the entire enemy hand with a full gauge green card. I mean, this just doesn't end. He's also not bad defensively. He has the card destruction. It almost feels like this guy was a fan-made unit almost. Like they were just like, yeah, let's literally just give every single broken ability in the game to this guy, and we're good to go, right? I mean, that seems like what the thought process was. So. I'm not really sure what else there is that needs to be said here. I guess when it comes down to directly comparing Beast Gohan to the Tag Super Saiyan 4s, which are easily the 2 characters I can see as number 1 and number 2, which is why I have the list the way it is. To me, Beast Gohan just feels like the more complete unit to me. I feel like he's doing more both offensively and defensively than the Tag 4s, but personally, I've also seen instances where the Tag 4s have made plays and done things that make me think to myself, damn, can Beast do that, right? I think the biggest argument that you could make for the Tag 4s potentially being better than this Gohan, at least right now, is the sub-count manipulation on enemy Rising Rush or Ultimate, right? It pretty much makes them immune to dying. Right? They can't get locked in unless they're actually inflicted by no switching, like, which is pretty uncommon. But that is an ability that obviously this Beast Gohan doesn't have, so that I think is what you can say for the Tag 4s. But I think both units are great, but 9 times out of 10, I've got to go with Beast as the better individual unit in this current meta. So just to recap the top 10 characters that we have on this list. Number 10, we have the LF androids 17 and 18. Number 9, we have LF Zenkai Super Saiyan Rose Goku Black. Number 8, we have the GT Android 17. Number 7, we have Ultra Legendary Super Saiyan Broly. Number 6, we have LF Future Gohan. Number 5, we have Dragon Ball Super Superhero Pan. Number 4, we have Zenkai LF Super Saiyan Goku. Number 3 is Blue Zamasu. Number 2, Tag Super Saiyan 4 Goku and Vegeta. And then number 1, LF Beast Gohan. So like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, let me know down below if you guys agree or disagree with any positions of this list. I'd like to hear what you guys have to say. I'd like to hear what you guys think. Agree, disagree. Let me know the reasons down below. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one.